Hi, everybody. This is Erica Mello, and welcome to episode number 77 of Tough to Treat. And for those of you who are not familiar with our podcast, welcome. And check out our website at www.toughtotreat.com. And we have some great Clinical Pearl PDFs. Once you opt in to the newsletter, you'll automatically get a Clinical Pearl PDF that I wrote and some great issues with regarding persistent pain patients and sleep that Susan wrote. And we also are, every other week, we're sending out Clinical Pearls video. And we just did one on neck progressions, and the one before that was a soccer player I treated who had persistent back pain. And they're really short videos, like 3 minutes or so. So hop on the newsletter and check out the website. So this episode is about a patient of mine who had persistent knee pain. And I put in the description of the podcast, we all have patients who come back for similar issues on and on, or over and over again over the years. And, that's their thing. Like this patient, her thing was her knee, right? She's going into college in the fall. I initially started treating her for her low back. That resolved probably about 6 years ago. And then she had ongoing issues with her knees. And, she's a runner and a lacrosse player, but it was the right knee, then it was the left knee, and then now it's the right knee. So why do patients come back even though you've discharged them, they're fully recovered, they're back to sport or whatever activity they want to return to? Why do they come back maybe 4 years later with the same problem? Right? It happens, right? Is it their strategy? Is it something new in their life? Do they have a traumatic event? If you've listened to the podcast, you'll know it's a combination of all of the above, right? And this particular patient is no exception. So we hope you enjoy it. Hi, everybody. This is Erica Mello with my lovely co-host Susan Clinton, and welcome to podcast episode number 76.
76.
My Lord.
Hard to believe. Yep.
I know. My gosh. I will get right into it. This is actually, as we're recording this, I actually did see this patient in person, after this long quarantine we've had. And she is a former patient of mine, actually. And we haven't done, I was looking back on the podcast, and we haven't done a ton on on the knee. We did at the beginning, and I thought this would be interesting to circle back to some of the peripheral joints and talk about some knee pain and some knee issues. And I think we did one early on, like podcast episode number 3, about my little junior golfer. Gosh, I remember him. So I wanted to circle back with her. And it's really ironic. I don't know if you see this, but people come in, if you have new patients, new patient returns, I call them, they come back at the same time every year for the same thing. Do you ever notice that?
Sometimes, yeah.
Right? So this girl is 18 years old. She's about to enter college in the fall, and she's going. They're going, she said. So she has on and off. I've treated her. Her initial issue many years ago when I started treating her was low back pain. And she is a track and field star, I think, for her school here in New York. And I think she does the 400 meters. She's not a long distance runner. She does sort of, the track and field type events, mostly running. And she is a lacrosse player. So that is in the spring, and in the fall, she does the track. She also hikes a lot and skis, doesn't ski as much. She's a runner is her main thing. And when she goes to college, she said she'll probably play intramural lacrosse because she's going to a Division I school, and she's just not good enough to get in that D1 status. So that's her history. And I've seen her on and off for knee pain. So at one point she tore her MCL, and she was about to leave for Europe for the summer for a study abroad program. And I remember seeing her in my office in June with a brace on. And then when I saw her yesterday in June, it was the opposite knee. So I said, what is this with you? Every June before you have to go away for the summer, you've got some issue. We joked about it. So the main issue now is right knee pain. But what was interesting with her this time is that it happened after she fell off a mountain bike ride. So they had left New York City since the beginning of March, as most people have. And she was up in another state, in the Northeast, hiking and mountain biking and just sort of, riding out the school year. She fell off the bike, landed right on her kneecap, and then she sort of fell into this sort of twist, rotated, like she couldn't describe it. No one falls off perfectly. I mean, they just fall and they twist. And, she was icing it, taking Advil. It was getting a bit better. It was bruised right on the top where the quad tendon was, bruised, a bit swollen. The bruising took about a week and a half to go away. So her the only other injury besides her low back was her other knee, as I mentioned. So other than that, everything else, her feet were pretty okay, but it was just a chronic knee issue that kept coming up over the years. And she definitely was in a very sort of high stress environment at home with applying to school, very a high achiever here in New York, in one of the private schools. So she was a sweet girl, really sweet girl, loved to run, but she fell off the mountain bike and her knee was getting a bit better, but it wasn't like going away. So her bruising went away, the swelling went down. They came back into New York, I guess, came back in for some time now. And they went to see the physician who diagnosed with quad tendonitis. Okay. I was like, that's fine. So the aggravating, what really bothered her were taking long walks. And, a friend of hers came into the city the other day and they walked literally like all the way downtown, and she lives up in the 70s. So she walked for hours. At the end of the walk, she said it was bothering her. I said, how about going up and down steps? She goes, that's okay, because she doesn't have a lot of steps. A lot of people in New York, we don't do stairs as much unless we take the subway. So she walked to the facility yesterday when I saw her, which was about 30 blocks. And it was quite warm, very hot here. And she was okay.
Okay, so 30 blocks was okay.
30 blocks was okay. So, and she can be a bit hypermobile, not horrifically so. And in the past, when I treated her knee, what got her better was focusing on her feet. So because of her foot control. But this was an overuse issue with the knee. She would come in, she'd be running track, and I would treat her knee secondarily, but the primary driver for her old issues were the same side foot. This was a traumatic fall, so I didn't want to bias myself at all. And so, do you have any questions so far, or should I keep going?
Nope, go ahead.
So when I took a look at her, she sweats a lot. Her feet were profusely sweating on the table. I mean, in standing. And I know that of her. I mean, just constant. I mean, Susan, dripping sweat. And I've had a couple other patients with that same situation. So I couldn't get a really good purchase. I had to go through a paper towel. I mean, I get a glove on. I just couldn't get a good purchase on her foot. So in standing, she's 18, didn't have nothing was really, jumping out at me. I had her do like a typical step forward. I watched her do like a step forward with the left, a step forward with the right. She was offloading her right side a little bit. So her center of mass was to the left, but understandably so. And so when I had her take a step forward with the left, she had this sort of typical internal rotation torque of her left. And her left was an old issue, not the current side. Her involved side is her right side now. But she had this, typical sort of female internal rotation of the pelvis and, the torque of the knee and dropping the arch, the whole internal rotation syndrome we see, right? Then when I had her do it on the right, it was worse. I mean, it was like she literally stepped forward and her entire body went to the left, her thorax, like she was almost going to fall over. But she compensated quickly out of it because she's so young and she can. And it's interesting because I've treated her brother and he also has had knee issues. Just a very, very, very successful junior skier. So I was like, interesting, but I'm trying not to bias myself. I went in, I had her do a mini squat. Then what I had her do is a full squat to the floor based on our last Facebook Live we did on the half squat versus the full squat. She did the full squat right to the floor. She had no problems. Butt to floor squat, no problems. Pretty symmetrical. Had her do a half squat, no problem. Stood on one leg, no problem. Left leg, no problem. Bend over, no problem. Nothing, zero, nothing, no problem. All straight, plain stuff. So I then got her on the table. because I wasn't seeing anything really except for that step forward. I did I always do it on the opposite side first. I just significantly overpressed into knee flexion on her left side. Then I repeated it on the right, which is her involved side, really overpressed into full knee flexion, hip at 90, knee like no pain, zero, nothing. Nothing. I did a little bit of stability testing. I didn't think she had stability issues, so I didn't go crazy with all those special tests. I just checked her patella. I went in. I'm trying to find something, right? Went on a quad tendon, friction, poked around, nothing. Nothing. Went to the foot, as sweaty as it was, just check the talocrural joint, check the rear foot, usual, nothing. So then I'm said to her, I said, can you explain to me how you fell again? And she's like, I fell like on my kneecap. I'm like, well, you could have had a bone bruise, which she probably has, but yeah, I said, your quad tendon is not sore. Your full knee flexion, I'm not finding anything. So she landed sort of like, I'm just doing this on video here. She landed with her right elbow on the ground and rotated to the left. I said, okay. So what I did is I went into her abdominal, I went into her obliques, and her right external oblique was like on fire, which makes sense because you fall in this sort of rotated position. It was almost like it was in spasm. She was pretty sore there. It was the only soreness I found on her was in her right EO. Left side, no problem. I said, let's look at this. Do a straight leg raise. I don't check these that much, but I'm like, do an active straight leg raise on your left. Up, and the minute she went up on the left, she had that internal rotation. Typical. Okay, a little hard, no problem. Right, she could barely lift the leg up. And I'm like, why can't you lift your leg up? So what I did, and she, at the top, she had this sort of an internal rotation torque of the femur. So what I did was, I started giving her some compressions, almost like pelvic girdle compressions. I just compressed the ASISs in the front. I said, lift your right leg up. Worse. I gave her posterior compression in the back, simulating sort of posterior chain. Lift the leg up. Worse. Like, okay. So then I went into her external oblique. I said, take a deep breath in. On the exhale, lift the leg up. Boom, right up. So I'm going to stop there. Do you have any thoughts on any of that?
So I find it interesting that, she's diagnosed, it's the case of the smoking gun. She lands on her knee. She has some knee pain, so therefore the knee must be the problem. Right. It's just like I said, it's the case of the smoking gun. But when you eliminate all the things that could be possible, you have to consider what's improbable, kind of like the Sherlock Holmes kind of way of thinking.
Right.
And it's like, okay, so she landed on her knee. She has knee pain, so it must be something going on with the knee, some sort of issue with the knee. But it wasn't. It was, probably and the telling sign for her was the load transfer, with a step out, step forward on the right, was what's really telling here, because she was unable to really control that well, like she was on the left side. Yeah. And so she's young, she's healthy, and it takes 40 or 50 blocks of walking to bring it out. And so rightly so, she's concerned because she wants to run and she wants to play lacrosse and do the things. But this is clearly not an issue of a knee tissue problem. It's much more of an issue of some sort of a trunk problem, and not even really a problem, but just a load transfer issue that could be brought on by, who knows, maybe the ball exaggerated something that was already there. She's a lacrosse player. Is she right-handed? Yeah. Does she carry the stick in the right hand? And so there's a lot of left rotation with her, a ton of it, because that's her, one of her big sports of choice. And so the bike falling on that side may have just played into that already, strong motor control pattern that she already has. And now it's and it doesn't really show up until she probably starts to fatigue, when she's walking at least greater than 30 blocks for sure, because she walked 30 blocks to your appointment and didn't have an issue. No. So it takes a ton to bring it on. but to me, the biggest telling sign that sticks out of everything is the load transfer on the step forward. And so I know everybody's kind of thinking, well, does the bike fall cause all of that to happen? I'm not really sure that the bike fall caused all of that to really happen. I don't know what your thoughts are. I think it exaggerated, it brought her into more of a movement. Maybe there's a bit of a protective response.
Yeah.
Maybe she's healed it all up by now, but what's happening is now is kind of showing up with this load transfer issue. You said they were away, so maybe she didn't have the chance to walk like she normally does all of the time after, lockdown. People were not out walking
Mm-hmm.
900 blocks and doing the things that they do in New York City.
Yep.
And so, with that kind of thing, maybe it just it took a lot to get it to
Yep.
show up. But
Yep.
she's young and athletic, so sometimes you'll see that with people that are pretty healthy, that you have to see them almost after, like, I need you to go walk 70 blocks before you
Right.
come to PT
Yes.
instead of 30. I want this stirred up when you're in here, so we can kind of see. I almost am thinking that this is something that it's really hard for me to put my finger on. I don't really, the nervous system is involved for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that it's a huge protective response, because she certainly doesn't seem to be protecting the knee in any kind of way, like, central nervous system type protection, pain response, sensitivity,
Yep.
things like that. But I do think that maybe there's something over time that as she keeps swinging and walking, that maybe a little fatigue sets in and brings out the dominant motor pattern. And
Mm-hmm.
that's when she starts, her system is kind of like, hey, we're kind of stepping on a different side of the foot now, and a different side of the knee now, all of a sudden, after 40
Mm-hmm.
blocks. And,
Yeah.
getting her attention and maybe eliciting a bit of a painful response, a painful protective response that way.
Yeah. Yeah. I
So
agree.
what'd you
Yeah.
do next?
So I took pictures as well because I've been doing all these screenshots with virtual, and I'm like, I'm going to do them in the clinic now because I'm trying to see if I see what I feel and feel what I see. So
Mm-hmm.
I took pictures and showed them to her, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't realize I did that." Of course not. We never do. So what I ended up doing, I explained to her. I said, compressions, like, and so she's of the opinion, and not her so much because she's been with me a while. Um, her parents are of the opinion, do those exercises, right? It's not about strengthening her quads or strengthening her glutes. I said, yes, you do have some overactive quads. You're a runner, okay? I mean, that makes sense. But in the past, when she came to see me for low back pain, her driver was in her thorax. She had an
Mm-hmm.
abdominal gripping strategy back then. We treated her fine. She hasn't had low back pain since, in probably like 5 years. But her issues have been her knees. And I didn't think the foot was the driver here based on her mechanism of injury. I agree with you. She is a
Mm-hmm.
right-handed. She is a lacrosse player. She did play lacrosse,
Mm-hmm.
up until the lockdown. And she's dominant, left rotation. So,
Mm-hmm.
and I explained that to her. I said, the fall or the fall off the bike just sort of not broke. I said, just sort of added insult to injury. I said, at the end of the day, you compensate really well. If you didn't fall, you wouldn't be having this. You can compensate out of those dominant patterns because you have a lot of movement options. You play two sports. One's a very sort of straight sagittal plane sport, and then you have a lacrosse, which is a rotational type sport. You have chosen great sports because you've given your body options for movement in many different planes. So, and she got that. So what I did was, ironically, with the feet sweating, that just gets me. I'm going to just go off topic for a second. Why is that? It's I see that a lot, and she's
It's
18.
well, there's a lot of theories behind it.
Yeah,
But one of the, especially in somebody young like her,
yeah.
when I see or think about hyperhidrosis, it makes me want to. I mean, my thing would be, has anybody discussed this with you, and has anybody checked your thyroid? This is a pretty clear sign, oftentimes, of hypothyroidism.
I didn't know
So,
that.
and young
Interesting.
people are more tend to like hyperthyroid than lower thyroid in
Yeah,
many ways, especially this age, 18.
yeah.
We get into some of the low thyroid stuff as we move into the reproductive years, but I'm just wondering if she's has a tendency towards hyperthyroidism, or maybe even Graves, which is a hyperthyroid,
Oh, that
kind
wouldn't
of
surprise me in
response.
the least, knowing her. Wow.
Yeah, yeah, and especially, so. that could be an underlying piece of, maybe she just with the knee stuff, or sensitivity
Very
around the knees
interesting.
or whatever, or the low back. I mean, but you can't, it's one of those things. It's like, are they just happening to walk hand in hand with her? I would probably have to almost say yes.
Yeah,
But as healthcare professionals, I'm not going to sit here and say that hyperthyroidism is causing her knee pain, because we don't know that.
right.
That's a stretch at best, if not even just kind of a pipe dream. However, if she has these tendencies and we're seeing them, it's, we should be like kind of saying, hey, this sometimes can be a sign that thyroid may be running a little bit on the high side. Doesn't
Hmm,
really mean
hmm.
that it's like super dangerous, but this is kind of a great way to, this is a conversation that, you should have with your doc, and let them run a full thyroid panel on you, and just make sure everything's cool and okay, especially as you're running off to college, because that can affect sleep. It can affect a lot of different things. It might even affect your nutrition a little bit, and
Yes.
so being an athlete, you want to be like, have all pistons optimized as best as possible.
Yeah, yeah,
And so that
absolutely.
can be a really nice way to kind of, dive in and have her, just kind of like relook at a few things,
Yeah,
that age and being very active and crazy and maybe not sleeping as much. There's a thousand things that can be going on, but if the thyroid is not working optimally, that certainly affects a lot of things. It affects absorption. It affects hormones. It affects many, many, many different things, and that ship needs to be righted if it's not. She may have a full thyroid panel and everything looks fine.
yeah.
Some people just, but that's one of the signs. She's
Interesting.
certainly way too young. She's not running infections under the thing. She's not in, she's 18. She doesn't have any reason to be having any kind of signs of menopause, or, which
No.
is another form of hyperhidrosis, but, generally at
Mhm.
night with full body, but sometimes can be hands and feet. Some of those, hormonal changes, but, if, as an athlete, if she is having some hormonal changes, then it could be because she's overtraining maybe a bit, but it doesn't sound like it right
Yes.
now. Although she was
She
out,
used to.
yeah, she's out now walking, and walking long blocks than she hasn't before, and so, but it's hard to say, was she having the hyperhidrosis while she was sitting in lockdown? You know,
Oh, I'm sure.
being
Yeah,
more
she's had it
calm.
before.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that would always, that just kind of makes me like, what engine is running a little too high in the background?
Yeah, you're right because she's very, very minimal sleep. I've known her for some years now. High stress, high achiever, family high
Mm-hmm.
achievers, very sort of poor sleep. Your typical teenager, but
Mm-hmm.
very, very stressed through the college application process because I was treating her at that point.
Mm-hmm.
And so that wouldn't be. I'm actually going to suggest that. That's a really good idea because it was profuse. It was to the point where I had to go through 4 towels. It was profuse yesterday.
Yeah.
And we were in an air conditioned space, so it wasn't like it was from the 88-degree weather outside. So that's interesting. So I like that. I really like that. So what I ended up doing with her, honestly, I gave her 2 things to do, Susan, and that was it. I had her lie on her back, do some lower trunk rotation to the left, put her finger on her oblique, just not like she can self-release it, but just for some tactile cueing. Lie on your back, drop your knees to the left, take an inhale in, breathe out into the diaphragm, and then drop your knees to the left and come back 10 times, 2, 3 times a day. And
Mm-hmm.
then she said, well, should I do some band exercises? I said, you want to do some band exercises? Wrap the TheraBand above your knees, do some backwards walking. That's what I gave her. I don't think she needed any band stuff, but her parents, I know her parents, they're like, they need to see some exercise. So sometimes you sort of have to give it. I didn't want her to do anything forward, sideways. I said, let's
Mm-hmm.
walk backwards. You're step forward with the right foot. I don't want to reinforce that pattern. So just take the band, just do some walking backwards. And that's literally what I gave her, those 2 things. Because you think about it, her hyperflexion, her ligamentous, the quad tendonitis. Yeah, of course, she's pointing to the quad tendon so that we doctor automatically assume she's got quad tendonitis. Okay, whatever. But and this is a subacute issue, so it's been going on now. I think her parents were like 3 weeks, so it's some subacute.
Mm-hmm.
But if you have a significant quad issue, your hyperflexion, squatting, you would really have a problem with that. And what's interesting is that Stairs were really not a problem. She said if her knee was bothering her, yes, stairs would bother it, but stairs would not bring it on at all. At
Mm-hmm.
all.
Well,
So, yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
no, that's interesting because if she, I would think that as she goes up on the right, she would have the rotation to the as you lift your right knee up, you rotate towards that knee to like go up
Yeah,
the stairs. You don't go the opposite way.
correct.
But as she lifts the left knee up, she would be going to the left
Correct.
with her trunk. And I don't know. I guess maybe if she did a ton of stairs, like
Right.
go up the steps of the Empire State Building and see how you feel.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah. See, she doesn't
maybe
do a
it
ton
brings
of
it on.
stairs.
I'm just kind of wondering, what did her single leg stance look like? I know what you did with the step out, and you saw the left rotation kind of piece. What did her say? Did she stand just on one leg? Was that okay? Was that
Yes.
off to the side?
No.
Okay.
No, it was really when she took a step forward, and then she had to sort of load the right leg and then transfer the weight over.
Mm-hmm.
That's when I saw it the most. You know, I did do a little bit of because knowing her foot, I said, just look at your heel raises, like just really quickly. Yeah, average. They weren't strong, but
Yeah.
I didn't think that was really relevant, to be honest.
Yeah. It'd be
So
it'd be cool to see her when she's stirred up.
right, right, exactly.
If you're gonna
So
if you're gonna, are you seeing her again?
yes, they may leave the country to go to visit relatives, but I don't know if that's going to be happening because they can't get flights out. So I will be seeing her again. So what do you suggest? Let's look at next steps then.
But for me, my next step would be I want you to let's find an appointment time where you can where you can go do that huge long walk
Mm-hmm. Yep.
so that you're
Yeah.
symptomatic when you come in. And,
Yeah.
she may, not be symptomatic the next time.
Yeah. I
But
know.
then you know
Yeah.
everything. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
well, whatever happened, you resolved it. But then we know,
Yeah.
so to me, it's almost like, once upon a time, I had somebody who was a very, very strong guy that was lifting weights and was complaining of his knee giving away. But all of the exercise and the stuff in the world, all the testing, in the clinic, nothing, nothing. And this guy was just so strong that it took him to go do a full workout.
Yeah.
And that's when it showed up.
Interesting. Yeah.
So the latency, and the issue, the fatigue issue that was coming from a nerve root impingement, it took a lot because he was so strong that he could get through everyday life without a problem. It was when he was in
Yeah.
the gym.
Yep.
And so I had to see him after he was like, I needed to see him fatigued. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I need you to go, we're going to have to figure this out. When can you get to the
Mm-hmm.
gym? And then can you come in right away to your PT appointment?
Yep. Yep.
And I mean, not even like, I mean, like right away, like across this, like, immediately,
Mm-hmm.
like don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to
Exactly.
recover,
Yes. Exactly. Maybe.
but I know, some other people had suggested at the time, just have him go up and down the stairs about 60 times out there until he feels it. And then let's test
Yeah.
him,
Yep. Yep.
because if it really was just true fatigue, it should be bilateral, unless there was an old injury and they just,
Yes.
don't have the best firing, motor control
Yeah.
kind of firing thing. But, this guy was definitely, much more of a nerve root issue.
Yeah.
It just wasn't, you just didn't see it. We were catching it early because he was like
Yeah.
to the point of no return at the gym when it would show up.
I know. And what was interesting with
For
her is,
anybody else, it would be like, maybe 2 or 3 years down the road, so we were
yes.
catching it at the very beginning just because of how it was loading. So I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to having them when they're insidious like this, almost because it feels almost insidious. Like,
Yeah.
I know she had an injury, and again, the case of the smoking gun, but I really feel like that this is much more of an insidious onset. You're gonna have to
Yeah.
like get her where she's like symptomatic
Yeah.
just to see
I know.
what
What
may
was
be happening. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. No, what was interesting is when I did the straight leg raise, and I don't look at that often, but you know, she's like, well, should I do strengthening? And I was explaining to her with the compression patterns clearly made her far worse. I'm like, I gotta find something here. And
Uh-huh.
I had a funny feeling it wasn't the knee. I don't know. I said, Amy, you probably have a
Yeah.
little bit of a
You
bone
already
bruise.
you have that
Yeah,
gut instinct.
exactly. So the next steps, I'm actually gonna have her do that, and I'm gonna see if she can possibly. I'm gonna ask her about the the thyroid issue because I doubt she's had it tested. So
Hmm.
But I'm curious now because she probably will need a physical before she goes into school in the fall. So not to mention some other things, I'm sure. So that's what I'm going to actually look at. And I think the key, just because, for the podcast listeners, is yes, it's really important. You want to sort of screen this subacute knee issue, but she, and yes, I did, and I know her, and I'm just trying to, like, I
Mm.
know her, my bias with her. So she fell off the bike. Yes, that contributed to it. And which is why I said, I'm not getting anything in the squat. She's not really weak. The two major objective findings are the step forward and the loading and the active straight leg raise. But what was interesting is that nothing, no, I was reluctant to give her the step forward backwards, the backwards because of the band, but she was like, I need to do something. I'm like, fine, just do that. Because I don't think I said strengthening's not gonna really take you home here. Okay.
Mm.
I think we need to sort of release this gripping pattern that you have, and then we'll recheck a few things. So that's where I left it with her. I do think that, especially the knee, and I often find in my clinical practice that the knee is always not the primary issue, unless they're post-op or they've had
Hmm.
an acute fall like she had. But her knee she didn't have quad tendonitis at all.
Hmm.
So I think with the listeners is, once again, look at the mechanism of injury, and if you're not finding anything on like a sort of basic exam, like have them, come in, have them walk 80 blocks
Yeah.
or run for her, run to the office. That'll really bring it on. And then and then we'll look, if there is a point where, if we're not finding anything in these unloaded sort of easier times for her, we need to sort of get them jacked up before they come in. So I think that's really
Yeah.
important,
Yeah. Exactly. I
so
would agree. And with her, the other, maybe underlying inflammatory, kind of thing with her, the one of the things I just wanted to say, and people can take it as they wish to, we do have gender bias in this country, quite a bit of it, as a matter of fact. Uh, I'm not trying to be divisive by any means at all, but uh, college and school physicals are geared towards boys. They're not going to
um,
look at thyroid. They're not going to ask her about periods. They're not going to ask her about cycles. They're not going to do, they just don't do that stuff.
right,
It's geared towards what, the general male will present that at that age.
well,
Are you
yeah,
healthy? Are you strong?
interesting,
Do you have colds?
yeah,
They may ask you, a little bit, but they're not. They're just not. They're just, they just run them through a few things and
yeah,
ask
interesting,
some general, general questions. They're probably going to gear more towards asthma than anything else.
yes,
So I would caution people who are working with this level of people and they're working with females that probably need to ask a lot more deeper questions
yes, yes,
beyond the physical.
yes, I agree,
What does my blood work show? Can you run a hormone panel? And would you also take a deep dive into the thyroid? And
yes,
be sure you're running a full thyroid panel on these people,
yes, yes,
and things like that, thinking about those types of things. And, it'd be
I
interesting to
agree.
see if she has any kind of, um, little hidden autoimmunity that may be, ready to kind of peek its head.
Wouldn't be surprised.
Right. It wouldn't surprise me either. And it just may be on the verge, and the sweating may be kind of one of the things that's like the little telltale sign that everybody tends to ignore. And it's like, just have a look. Has she had
Yeah.
mono? That would be something I'd like to know.
Oh, she's had that. Yes,
Yeah, and
she's had
so
it.
yeah, and that virus can stay in the system for a long time.
Yeah,
It may not
yeah,
be symptomatic anymore, but it can hang out for a long time, and that can, these things that run in the background, can really affect, the hormone and the thyroid health over time. And if that's
yeah,
her tendency, then it's worth checking out. If it renders nothing, it renders nothing. So, but it's good to have that and to know that and to just be sure that you're unturning, that you're, let's uncover a few more of these stones just to make sure
yeah.
that everything else is on board here too.
Yeah, and she's going to be playing lacrosse at school, but not D1. I mean, she's going to probably do like an
Hmm.
intramural type. And I do think it's important, the more we do these podcasts, I realize how important it is for these young female athletes to get screened for, issues with their periods, with, the thyroid, and to be taken seriously at that age. Because,
Yeah.
these girls she's not going to stop exercising. I mean, there's no way, and she's going
Hmm.
to be in college and she's got all these things being thrown at her, and I think this is a really good time to shape new habits, right? And or
Hmm.
just take these girls seriously. So
Hmm.
uh and I guarantee you this is not going to be the time if she comes in with a foot issue or something else, and I know her. Yeah, maybe it's the foot, but there's going to be something else overarching. I can almost guarantee it.
Hmm.
So that's her. I hope everybody enjoyed it. I
Yes.
wanted to do something on the knee and do a young female athlete. We haven't done that in a while. So hope you all enjoyed it, and we'll see you on the next episode.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Bye.